Welcome back to Silent Conspiracy. Picture this. The 1990s South Goa's quiet countryside. Magnificent mansion stands abandoned behind rusted gates windows. Dark gardens overgrown, silence so thick, it feels like pressure against your ears. Locals won't walk past after sunset. Taxi drivers refuse fares that end at that address. Urban explorers who breach the compound walls report experiences that defy explanation. Phantom footsteps in empty rooms, children's laughter where no children play, and the overwhelming sensation of being watched by eyes that haven't blinked in decades. Tonight, the story of the Rodrigues, also known as the Dia Mello mansion where family tragedy soaked into the walls so deeply that some say the grief never left. Where prosperity turned to madness, and where Goa's most beautiful home became its most feared address. The mansion's story begins with success and ambition in the early 20th century. The Rodrigues family, wealthy Catholic landowners with Portuguese connections, built their dream home in what was then Portuguese Goa. The architecture reflected colonial grandeur, high ceilings, sweeping staircases, ornate balconies, and rooms designed for entertaining Goa's elite. The family's fortune came from plantations, trade, and strategic marriages that connected them to power structures in both Lisbon and the local aristocracy. For decades, the mansion represented everything Goan Catholic families aspired to: wealth that announced itself through architecture, status that came with land and Portuguese surnames, and a lifestyle that bridged European sophistication with tropical abundance. The Rodrigues hosted lavish parties where champagne flowed and society gathered. The gardens were maintained by dozens of workers. The family name carried weight in legal, commercial, and social circles. But prosperity proved fragile. The exact timeline varies depending on who tells the story, but tragedy began claiming the family sometime in the mid-20th century. Some versions speak of a business collapse that destroyed the family's fortune, overnight investments gone bad, ships lost at sea, deals that turned catastrophic. Others describe a patriarch who descended into madness, becoming violent and unpredictable as mental illness consumed him. Many accounts mention a series of deaths within the family that occurred too close together to be coincidental. Suicides, accidents, illnesses that shouldn't have killed young, healthy people, but somehow did. The most persistent story involves the family's children. According to local legend, multiple children died within the house under circumstances that were never satisfactorily explained. Some versions claim they fell from the balconies or staircases in accidents that seemed impossible given the safety features. Others whisper about a parent who, in the grip of madness or despair, took actions that destroyed the family line. Still others suggest disease swept through the household, claiming the young while sparing the old, a pattern that felt more like curse than contagion. What's documented is the family's decline. By the 1970s or 1980s, the mansion stood largely empty. The remaining family members either died, moved away, or simply vanished from public record. The property passed through legal complexities, disputed inheritance, unclear ownership, claims and counterclaims that ensured no one could easily buy or demolish it. The mansion became frozen in legal limbo, while the physical structure began its slow surrender to tropical entropy. Nature reclaimed the gardens first. Vines crept up walls, roots broke through foundations, trees grew through courtyards that had once hosted formal dinners. Windows broke from storm damage and were never repaired. Roofs developed leaks that stained ceilings with water damage, forming shapes people swore looked like faces. The gate rusted shut, though determined trespassers found ways in through breaches in the compound wall. The hauntings are what people interpret as hauntings began being reported in the 1980s and 1990s as the house transitioned from abandoned property to local legend. The accounts follow patterns common to haunted house lore, but with specific details that lend them unsettling specificity. The children's laughter is the most frequently reported phenomenon. People walking past the property at dusk or night describe hearing clear sounds of children playing, running footsteps, giggles, voices calling out, and games of hide and seek. When brave souls investigate, they find empty rooms and silence that feels somehow angry at being disturbed. The laughter never comes from a single source. It moves through the house as if the children are running from room to room, always just beyond sight. Apparitions appear most commonly in photographs and reflections rather than direct sightings. Urban explorers who entered the mansion with cameras report that their photos show figures in windows that were empty when the pictures were taken. Mirrors those that have been shattered or looted. Sometimes reflects scenes that do match the reality in front of them. A furniture that no longer exists, people in period dress rooms as they appeared decades ago when the house was alive with family. The overwhelming sensation of being watched afflicts nearly everyone who enters. It's not the natural wariness of exploring an abandoned building. Witnesses describe it as targeted attention, as if invisible observers are tracking every movement with hostile intent. Some report feeling breath on their necks in rooms with no air circulation, or hearing whispers in languages they can't quite identify, Portuguese mixed with Konkani. Voices layered over each other as if multiple conversations from different eras are happening simultaneously. The staircases provoke particular dread. Multiple people report feeling pushed while climbing or descending, as if invisible hands shove them toward falls that would replicate whatever killed the family's children. Others describe the opposite sensation, being held back, grabbed by unseen forces that prevent them from leaving certain rooms or ascending to the upper floors where the bedrooms were located. Temperature anomalies occur in patterns that don't match structural damage or airflow. Certain rooms remain inexplicably cold, even during Goa's brutal summer heat, while others feel oppressively hot despite broken windows that should allow breeze. The cold spots move witnesses report walking through pockets of frigid air that feel like stepping into refrigerators, then emerging back into tropical warmth within a few steps. Objects move in ways that resist rational explanation. Explorers who've placed markers, rocks, bottles, spray-painted symbols to track their route through the house return to find them rearranged or missing entirely. The doors that were propped open stand closed. Rooms that were photographed as empty show signs of recent disturbance. Footprints in dust, furniture shifted, items gathered into patterns that suggest ritual or message. The most disturbing reports come from those who've attempted to spend significant time in the house. Overnight stays usually attempted by paranormal investigators or daredevils seeking to prove their courage rarely make it till dawn. People describe sleep paralysis episodes where they reawake but unable to move while figures approach their sleeping bags. They report dreams so vivid and horrifying they blur into hallucination. Visions of the family's final days. Scenes of violence or despair. Children calling for help that never comes. Several people who've explored the mansion extensively report psychological effects that persist long after leaving. Recurring nightmares featuring the house, obsessive thoughts about returning, and anxiety that manifests specifically when they encounter similar architecture or hear children's voices. Whether this represents genuine supernatural influence or the power of suggestion, working on minds primed by local legends, is impossible to determine definitively. The property's legal status has contributed to its haunted reputation. Multiple attempts to purchase, restore, or demolish the mansion have failed. Deals collapse at the last minute. Investors withdraw for reasons they can't articulate. Contractors refuse to work on the site after initial visits. This pattern reinforces the local belief that the house itself resists change, that whatever presence inhabits it wants preservation of the space as a monument to the family's tragedy. Local attitudes toward the mansion reflect Goa's complex relationship with its past. For older Catholic Goans, the Rodrigues house represents the decline of a way of life colonial, a privilege that could and survive. India's independence, families whose Portuguese connections became liabilities rather than assets. For younger generations, it's become a dare. A rite of passage to prove courage by approaching the gates or sneaking inside. Religious leaders from various traditions have attempted interventions over the years. Catholic priests have performed exorcisms and blessings. Hindu pundits have conducted pujas meant to pacify restless spirits. None report lasting success. The phenomena continue, the reputation grows, and the house stands as a monument to suffering that time hasn't healed. What makes the Rodrigues mansion particularly compelling is how it embodies themes universal to haunted house narratives. While remaining distinctly Goan, the mix of Portuguese colonial architecture, Catholic family tragedy, and tropical decay creates an aesthetic of beautiful ruin. The house represents not just personal family tragedy, but the death of an entire social order. Portuguese Goa's aristocracy, way of life that ended when India annexed the territory in 1961. Could the hauntings be explained without invoking the supernatural? Absolutely. Abandoned buildings create perfect conditions for misinterpreting natural phenomena. Structural settling sounds like footsteps wind through broken windows. mimics voices, infrasound from decaying infrastructure, causes anxiety and hallucinations. Mold spores produce psychological effects, and the power of suggestion makes people experience what they expect to experience in haunted locations. But explanations don't erase experiences. Whether the Rodrigues mansion is genuinely haunted or simply abandoned, it has become a space where Goa's past refuses to stay buried. The children's laughter, real or imagined, reminds visitors that suffering leaves its marks deeper than historical records capture, that trauma can soak into walls and floorboards, becoming part of the architecture itself. The mansion stands today much as it has for decades, decaying slowly, legally frozen, practically untouchable. Occasionally there's talk of development. The land is valuable, the location increasingly desirable as Goa's real estate market expands, but nothing comes of it. The house waits, and the stories grow with each generation that inherits the legend. What makes a house haunted? Is it the presence of genuine supernatural entities? Or is it our collective agreement to remember tragedy in a specific place? Could the Rodrigues mansion's hauntings be elaborate psychological phenomena? Our minds constructing narratives from ambiguous stimuli because abandoned buildings demand stories? Or does suffering of sufficient intensity actually leave imprints that sensitive people can detect? Echoes of agony that never fully fade? The answer might matter less than the question. The Rodrigues house serves as a reminder that prosperity is fragile, that families can collapse as completely as the buildings that house them, that some sorrows become so loud they keep echoing long after everyone involved has died. If this exploration of Goa's most notorious haunted mansion intrigued you, like this video, subscribe to Silent Conspiracy, and ring the bell for more investigations into places where the past refuses to rest peacefully. Next time, we'll visit another location where beauty and horror coexist, where paradise conceals tragedies that time hasn't erased and may never will. Until then, respect abandoned spaces, question what you hear in empty rooms, and remember that the most haunted places might not be supernatural at all. It might just be structures holding grief too heavy for time alone to heal.